Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about something called generational inheritance. Um, and a lot of us, when we think about inheritance, we think of property, money, wealth, those types of things. But I'm going to be talking about um, emotional inheritance, the ability to be resilient, to bounce back, to persevere, and also the effects of trauma and how that can get passed down from generation to generation. So I'm Vivian Morgan. If you're new to this channel, this is Confessions of a People Pleaser. I'm a personal empowerment coach. I'm also a licensed therapist in the state of Maryland. So there have been some research updates in the field of genetics that are, for many of us in the field, fascinating because they let us know risk factors for people who may be coming in with depression or anxiety or PTSD and understanding the complex history of that individual. So some of these studies came out of looking at Holocaust survivors and famine survivors in the 1940s, Holocaust survivors a little bit later, kind of tracking expressions of their genetic composition as they relate to stress. And what they found was that due to a process called uh, methylation. Methylation is this turning off or on the genetic expression of a gene. And this is affected by life experiences. And obviously, stress and trauma is a life experience. But it also can be mitigated by lifestyle choices and positive life experiences. And I think this is really important when we look at our own family history. Your family history is complicated, just like many of us. And in part, we inherit lots of things from our family. They get passed down from generation to generation. But to acknowledge that, we may actually have inherited a risk factor for experiencing anxiety and depression and symptoms of PTSD without having lived experiences that correlate with that expression really helps people understand themselves better. It also helps people understand that if you have a family history of stress, abuse, trauma, you're going to have markers that are elevated for your own expression of that without having a life experience necessarily that relates to it. This is helpful because it helps us understand ourselves better. And many people have experienced a great deal of relief in understanding that my predisposition to depression, anxiety, has a lot to do with my mother's experience in life and her mother's and her mother's. So with the Holocaust and the famine studies, they went 2 generations beyond the lived experience and found that those markers for those stress affected genes that are particularly activated during stressful situations, were turned on. So knowing your family history becomes super important. And as somebody who's a family systems therapist, I really like to look at family history because you're looking at these experiences that may have turned on genetic expression in your body. It's also really important to know that you also inherit perseverance and resilience are both inheritable, and they are also affected by lifestyle choices like diet, exercise, how we cope with stress, the skills we learn to manage our own emotional reactivity is super important in mitigating the effects of the genetic expression. So a lot of this is within your control, and it helps you understand your makeup a little better. Another thing I want to point out as I'm looking, through this research, is that oftentimes we will look at the trauma and the difficulties our parents went through and how that was passed on or how that was manifested and how they parented and in our own life experience. But I want you to also look at the gifts that your family may have passed on to you in terms of positive attributes, like resilience, like perseverance, When I look at my family history, I see a lot of codependency in the women that came before me, but I also see a lot of devotion, a lot of loyalty, a lot of determination, a lot of perseverance, a lot of grit. And it was very quiet grit. And that helps me understand myself better too, because I've often had trouble expressing myself or letting my voice be heard. And I understand now that that comes from a long line of women who struggled with that and found other ways to make their importance known to their families. And I have great appreciation for their perseverance and persistence and a dedication to family that through them is also expressed in me. So I hope you can kind of take a look at your family history, find out the gems, the gold that you can sift through and take forward with you, as well as the tough stuff that alerts you to the risk factors that you might be facing during stressful times. So feel free to reach out if you want more information or if you find this interesting, and I'd love to hear from you. Take care.